Meta, $174 billion buyback shift. Will your AI bet destroy value? You know, when a massive corporation has $174 billion just sitting around, you naturally picture this, like impenetrable, heavily guarded vault. And historically, the plan for the cash inside that vault is incredibly predictable.
Right, you slowly hand it back to the investors who helped build the company.
Exactly, through stock buybacks.
Yeah.
It's safe, it's steady, it's, well, what the market expects.
Yeah, it has been the ultimate financial thank you note for decades. I mean, stock buybacks are basically the comfort food of Wall Street.
The comfort food, right?
Yeah, representing financial engineering at its most reliable. You shrink the number of shares so the value of the remaining shares goes up, and everyone is happy.
But imagine you walk into that vault one morning, and instead of writing those dividend checks or repurchasing shares, the CEO is shoveling all that cash into a massive furnace.
Literally burning it to power.
Hmm.
A completely unknown, highly experimental engine.
Right. So, welcome to today's deep dive. We are thrilled you're joining us because today we are unpacking a massive structural shift happening right in front of our eyes.
And we are using a fascinating, really hard-hitting strategic analysis from L-Impact Solutions.
Yes, a premier business consultancy, and this was authored by Dr. M. Lokeshwari.
The report serves as an incredibly comprehensive case study, honestly. L-Impact Solutions really pulls back the curtain on how artificial intelligence is completely reshaping corporate capital allocation.
And not just for the tech giants, right?
No, for anyone trying to navigate this space.
So our mission for you today is simple. We are going to use L-Impact Solutions' expert framework to figure out if Meta pausing this mountain of cash meant for buybacks to funnel it into AI infrastructure is, the smartest tech pivot of the decade, or a fast track to destroying shareholder value.
Because the sheer scale of what we are talking about is staggering.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because Meta isn't just tweaking their annual IT budget, they are redirecting a cumulative $174 billion share repurchase program directly into artificial intelligence.
Right.
It's like saving up for years to reward your investors with a massive dividend, but at the last second, deciding to spend it all on building an entirely new digital civilization.
And the scale of that digital civilization becomes clearer when you look at Meta's projected spending. I mean, their 2026 capital expenditure alone is expected to hit somewhere between $125 billion and $145 billion.
Wait, up to $145 billion in a single year?
In a single year. That is money flowing directly into physical assets. So AI servers, massive data centers, complex networking infrastructure.
I need to pause on that because that number is so large it almost loses its meaning. That is roughly the entire gross domestic product of a medium-sized country.
Spent in 12 months on computer servers.
Yeah.
And this is where the L-Impact Solutions analysis points out a crucial reality for your own business strategy.
Because this is not an isolated meta phenomenon?
Exactly. The major hyperscalers, so think Google, Microsoft, Amazon, the companies providing the cloud infrastructure for the internet, they are collectively expected to spend more than $700 billion on AI infrastructure just this year alone.
Just this year? Wow.
And looking at the cumulative industry investment, forecasts project it approaching $1.2 trillion by 2027.
1.2 trillion. That feels less like an investment cycle and more like an industry-wide panic.
Well, the L-Impact report defines it as a permanent structural change. The era of prioritizing financial engineering is taking a backseat to infrastructure dominance.
Because whoever owns the physical infrastructure dictates the pricing power later.
Precisely. They control enterprise adoption and wield platform influence. If you do not own the infrastructure, you simply rent your future from whoever does.
I want to pull on that thread about physical infrastructure because when people hear AI or the cloud, they picture software, right?
Right. They imagine code floating in the ether.
Exactly. Maybe an app on their phone. But you're talking about pouring concrete and laying steel.
Oh, artificial intelligence is intensely, heavily physical. It requires investments measured in massive scale electricity generation, industrial cooling systems, and specialized semiconductor procurement.
So it's not just a bunch of laptops.
Far from it. To give you a sense of scale from the research, a single hyperscale AI data center requires anywhere from 500 megawatts to over 1 gigawatt of electricity.
Well, what does 1 gigawatt even look like in the real world?
Well, 1 gigawatt is roughly the output of a standard nuclear reactor.
A nuclear reactor for one data center.
Yes. It is enough energy to power a mid-sized city of several 100,000 homes. And we are talking about routing that much electricity into a single building.
That is insane.
It is. And inside those centers, advanced AI clusters are deploying anywhere from 100,000 to over 1 million graphics processing units, or GPUs, over their operating lifecycle.
Over 1 million GPUs.
Right. The physical density of this computing power is so extreme that global data center electricity demand is projected to more than double before 2030.
Okay, I have to push back here for a second. We've been taught for decades that technology gets cheaper and more efficient over time, right?
Sure, Moore's Law.
Exactly. Moore's Law basically promises that computing power doubles while costs go down. So why the absolute panic to spend $145 billion right now? Can't a company like Meta just wait 3 years for the chips to get faster and cheaper?
Well, the instinct to wait for cheaper technology makes sense in traditional software, but Dr. Lokesh Hari outlines a severe macroeconomic constraint in the current landscape.
Which is?
High-performance AI chips are incredibly supply constrained. There is a physical limit to how many of these GPUs the global supply chain can manufacture.
Oh, so you can't just order a million chips on Amazon Prime.
No, not at all. Furthermore, the specialized talent, the elite engineering minds needed to design the architecture and write the algorithms is exceptionally rare.
So it's a scarcity grab. You aren't just buying the chips.
Yes,
You're
yeah.
buying them so your competitor cannot have them.
That is exactly the dynamic. If companies delay their infrastructure investments today to wait for cheaper hardware, they lose their place in line.
And they lose competitive flexibility.
Exactly, over the next few crucial years where market standards are being set. However, L-Impact Solutions issues a glaring warning on this exact point.
Okay, what is the warning?
Even if the actual hardware prices do gradually decline over time, rising energy prices could absolutely destroy operating margins.
Because of the nuclear reactor's worth of electricity we talked about?
Exactly. You are powering an asset that eats a nuclear reactor's worth of electricity.
Right.
If the cost of global energy spikes, having cheaper hardware sitting in the racks will not save your bottom line.
Which leads us to a fascinating tension in the report. If operating costs are going to skyrocket because of energy and talent, how do these companies actually make this money back?
That is the trillion-dollar question.
Right. So what does this all mean for the listener's portfolio or for a business leader trying to integrate AI? Are these tech giants just building the world's most expensive, rapidly depreciating digital paperweights?
Well, the core critique from L-Impact Solutions tackles this directly. They emphasize that capital intensity alone, just spending the most money, rarely creates sustainable value.
Okay.
The current AI boom heavily resembles past infrastructure bubbles. Think of the late 1990s telecom boom.
Oh, right. Where companies laid down millions of miles of fiber optic cable?
Yes, assuming demand would immediately follow.
And the demand didn't follow fast enough. The builders went bankrupt.
Exactly. Even if the fiber optic cables eventually powered the modern internet a decade later for different companies.
Right. The pioneers got arrows in their backs.
The parallel is striking. Currently, enterprise AI adoption is growing, but the report notes a massive number of organizations are still just piloting AI.
Like running small tests.
Yeah, maybe trying out a new chatbot for internal HR. But if the sheer volume of infrastructure capacity being built outpaces actual monetization.
Meaning real recurring dollars coming in from customers paying for these services.
Right. If it outpaces that, it will crush what financial analysts call return on invested capital, or ROIC.
Meaning for every dollar you feed into this massive machine, you're only getting a few pennies back in actual profit.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the transparency around this seems almost non-existent.
Yeah, the L-Impact report points out that if I'm an investor looking at a retail chain, I can look at their same-store sales, right?
To see if a new location is profitable, exactly.
Or if it's an airline, I can look at passenger capacity. How do you actually value a $145 billion AI bet when the products haven't even been invented yet?
You've hit on a major structural weakness in current market behavior. AI infrastructure valuation relies heavily on unproven forward expectations.
So they are guessing.
Essentially, yes. Analysts and investors are guessing about future enterprise adoption rates, future software subscription revenues, and pricing models that do not yet exist.
Relying on optimism and narratives instead of observable business performance.
Exactly. And that leads to the difference between an infrastructure-first strategy and a customer value-first strategy.
Which might be my favorite concept in this entire analysis.
It is a vital distinction for any leadership team. Currently, executive presentations are flooded with vanity metrics.
Like GPU counts.
Right. Leaders love bragging about their total GPU counts, the trillion parameter size of their language models, or the exaflops of computing power they possess.
An exaflop, by the way, is a billion calculations per second.
It sounds incredibly impressive on an earnings call.
It really does. But it doesn't mean you're making money.
No.
No.
It is the equivalent of a trucking company bragging about the top speed of their vehicles without mentioning they cannot afford the diesel fuel to run them.
Or that they have no cargo to ship.
Yep.
Exactly. L-Impact Solutions points out that companies dedicate far less attention to the metrics that actually sustain a business.
Like operating cash flow conversion.
Right. Customer retention and revenue per employee.
Because at the end of the day, AI infrastructure is a depreciating asset. A server rack doesn't age like real estate, it ages like a smartphone.
That is a great way to put it.
It gets older, slower, and less valuable every single day as newer models come out.
The financial reality is brutal. If that infrastructure does not consistently generate recurring commercial value that is greater than its cost of capital, it destroys value.
Period. The sheer number of exaflops you possess cannot save a flawed business model.
No, it can't.
So let's bring this directly back to Meta, because their specific execution tightrope is terrifying to look at. They aren't a startup building this in a garage with venture capital.
They have a massive existing day job.
Right. Meta has to protect a digital advertising business that generates over 95% of their total sales. Maintaining that core engine is critical. I mean, 95% of the revenue, keeping the lights on, paying the server bills, and funding this massive pivot comes from selling ads.
And they have to defend that territory against intense competition while simultaneously redirecting $174 billion into AI.
And the cost of the talent required to pull this off is mind-bending.
Yeah, the source mentions they are paying elite AI researchers compensation packages that exceed tens of millions of dollars annually.
For individual engineers.
Here's where it gets really interesting. It is like trying to rebuild the engine of a commercial airplane while it is flying at 30,000 feet.
While replacing the parts with incredibly expensive experimental technology.
Yes, all while defending the plane against a flock of cyberbirds.
The cyberbirds analogy is actually highly appropriate when you look at the macroeconomic headwinds outlined in the report.
Right, because they are building this in a hostile environment.
Very hostile. First, you have elevated interest rates, which fundamentally change the math on capital-intensive projects.
Because money isn't virtually free to borrow anymore.
Exactly. So the pressure to show immediate returns skyrockets. Second, you have severe semiconductor supply concentration.
Meaning they all rely on the same few factories.
Yes, most of these chips rely on manufacturing choke points in geopolitically sensitive areas like Taiwan.
Oh, so if one supply chain link breaks, the whole $145 billion machine grinds to a halt.
Then you add expanding global data regulations, and to your point about cyber threats, global cybercrime damages are projected to exceed $10 trillion annually by the end of the decade.
10 trillion.
Yes. And as these AI models ingest more proprietary corporate data, they become the most lucrative targets for state-sponsored hackers and ransomware syndicates in history.
So Meta is walking a tightrope in a hurricane. Any single failure, like a drop in digital ad spending or a geopolitical shock to the chip supply, could snap the wire.
Or a catastrophic data breach. This is exactly why L-Impact Solutions stresses that disciplined governance, not just the sheer size of the financial investment, will determine which companies survive this decade.
Throwing money at the problem is no longer a viable strategy.
Not at all.
Well, let's pivot to the listener, because this is where the rubber meets the road. Whether you are running a scrappy mid-sized business, leading a corporate IT team, or just trying to figure out where to allocate your investment portfolio.
How do you actually win in this environment?
Exactly. Let's open up the L-Impact Solutions Survival Playbook. What is step one?
The foundational rule in their playbook is shifting from technology-driven enthusiasm to disciplined capital allocation.
Meaning you have to stop giving AI projects automatic budget priority just because they sound innovative.
Precisely. Every single AI initiative must start with a rigidly defined commercial objective. Before a dollar is spent, leadership needs to define the expected internal rate of return, or IRR.
What is the exact payback period?
What are the financial key performance indicators? AI needs to compete for its budget against traditional software upgrades, marketing campaigns, or new hires.
No more blank checks. You have to force the technology to justify its own existence. And the timeline the report suggests is surprisingly aggressive, isn't it?
Very. They advise prioritizing initiatives that can produce measurable financial returns within 12 to 24 months.
12 to 24 months, that is fast.
That window prevents companies from falling into the trap of funding endless, sprawling research projects that never yield commercial products.
So what do these high-value near-term applications actually look like?
The report provides excellent benchmarks. For instance, if you are deploying intelligent customer service automation, the mechanism should be sophisticated enough to resolve complex queries without human intervention.
And effectively cutting your support costs by 20 to 40%.
Exactly. Or look at industrial applications like predictive maintenance.
Right, if you are paying to integrate AI to monitor your manufacturing equipment, it shouldn't just give you a dashboard of cool data.
You should actively anticipate machine failures, lowering your operational downtime by 15 to 30%.
Wow.
The efficiency demands are just as rigid in knowledge work. For software development, AI copilots and automated testing should be improving your developer productivity by 20 to 50%.
And in supply chain optimization.
Algorithms predicting demand shocks and routing logistics should drive inventory costs down by 10 to 20%. The principle here is absolute. If the deployment is not hitting measurable hard dollar metrics, the investment is failing.
But how does a company actually test those metrics without blowing their entire IT budget on a massive failure?
L Impact Solutions recommends something called a staged investment model.
Which seems like the ultimate defense against the hype cycle.
It is a brilliant piece of risk management. The methodology dictates that you never roll out an untested AI solution enterprise-wide.
Never do it all at once.
Right. Instead, you allocate only 10 to 15% of your total AI budget to highly controlled, isolated pilots.
You test the technology on a small subset of data or a single department.
And if it fails there, you shut it down, and you have only lost 10% of your budget.
Not the whole thing. That is smart.
Exactly. If the pilot succeeds and hits those 12 to 24-month KPIs, you move to the second stage.
Which is allocating 25 to 35% of the budget for validated, wider production deployment.
And you only unlock the final 50 to 60% of the funding for a full global rollout after measurable commercial success has been independently verified by your finance team.
Not just the IT department.
Correct.
I love the mechanics of that. It treats AI the way you would treat a highly paid, demanding new executive. You don't just hand them the keys to the entire company on day one based on a good resume.
They have to prove their ROI quarter by quarter.
Using quantitative scorecards, the report even recommends a baseline expectation, right? Like expecting your AI initiatives to contribute 5 to 10% of your total top-line revenue within 3 years.
Yes. If it's not pulling its weight, you terminate the program before it drags down your overall enterprise financial performance.
And while you are enforcing this internal discipline, the playbook stresses that you must protect yourself structurally from external shocks.
Diversification in your AI architecture is mandatory.
Meaning you cannot afford to be locked into a single ecosystem.
Right. The technical term is a multi-cloud deployment. You need the ability to run your AI workloads across different cloud providers using multiple different semiconductor suppliers.
Employing hybrid infrastructure strategies that mix cloud resources with on-premise servers.
The logic is simple. If a geopolitical event disrupts a major chip manufacturer, or a specific cloud provider suffers a catastrophic outage,
You do not want your company's entire AI capability going dark because you were functionally tethered to a single vendor.
it is basic portfolio theory applied to data architecture.
Which actually leads to the human element, a factor that feels almost entirely lost in the broader cultural conversation about AI.
Very true.
The standard narrative is that AI equals workforce reductions. You buy the software, you fire the middle managers, your margins go up.
But L Impact Solutions takes the exact opposite approach. They view the fire-to-fund strategy as deeply short-sighted.
So what do they advise instead?
The report advises organizations to actively invest 2 to 5% of their annual payroll back into their human capital.
Specifically focusing on workforce reskilling, leadership development, and broad AI literacy.
Yes.
Walk me through the mechanism of why reskilling your current employees is actually more profitable than replacing them with an algorithm.
Because an AI model cannot understand the nuanced context of your specific corporate culture. It doesn't know your legacy client relationships or your unwritten operational bottlenecks.
That makes a lot of sense.
Companies that invest in reskilling their existing experts to use AI as a tool see vastly stronger technology adoption rates.
And significantly less internal resistance, I would imagine.
Exactly. Your employees stop viewing the technology as a threat out to sabotage their jobs and start using it as a lever to multiply their own output.
ultimately creating greater, more sustainable productivity improvements than treating AI merely as an excuse to cut headcount.
Precise.
So if we synthesize all of these strategic pillars to actually survive this massive capital shift, corporate boards need to stop treating AI as a fascinating IT experiment.
And start managing it as a distinct, highly volatile corporate asset class. The governance requirements must match the capital risk.
So L Impact Solutions strongly recommends that boards of directors establish dedicated AI governance committees.
Just as a modern board has a dedicated committee for cybersecurity or enterprise risk management, the scale of AI investment now requires that exact level of relentless, specialized oversight.
So to recap the massive journey we have been on today, artificial intelligence is not an automatic competitive moat.
No, buying massive quantities of GPUs does not magically make your business invincible.
It is an incredibly complex capital risk that demands flawless execution, rigid financial governance, and verifiable commercial outcomes.
If you aren't measuring it, you're just shoveling cash into that furnace we talked about at the top of the show.
Right. The entire L-Impact philosophy boils down to discipline.
In an era of boundless technological ambition, rigorous execution is the only thing that protects shareholder value.
But before we wrap this up, there is a subtle thread buried in this analysis that points toward a pretty provocative future.
Yeah.
We established that AI infrastructure is fundamentally a depreciating asset. Today's state-of-the-art server rack is tomorrow's e-waste.
Very true.
But at the exact same time, data center electricity demand is doubling globally, and cyber threats are surging toward that $10 trillion mark. When you look at those conflicting curves, what is the ultimate blind spot for the market right now?
Oh, I see what you mean. The blind spot is assuming the technology itself is the moat. If hardware depreciates rapidly and open source models eventually commoditize the software layer, the true long-term winners of the AI revolution might not be the companies with the flashiest language models.
Or the ones who purchase the most GPUs in 2026.
Right. The real winners will likely be the organizations that can secure the cheapest, most reliable, and most secure long-term energy contracts.
Coupled with fiercely guarded proprietary data.
Exactly. When the dust of this $1.2 trillion build-out settles, energy resilience and unique, high-quality human data might be the only true strategic moats left standing.
Energy and data. The foundational resources outlasting the hype. Something to seriously think about as we watch Meta's $174 billion pivot continue to unfold. To navigate these massive capital shifts and for more strategic analyses, visit our website link in description below.
Maintain your skepticism, demand measurable returns, and ensure every dollar you deploy is actually building durable value.
Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive. We will catch you next time, and until then, keep looking past the headlines.